Sup shitters, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Interviews for number 36 today, where I have the pleasure of chatting to an act named Saint Severus. And if we switch over to here, we have the man of the plan on screen. Feel free to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, this is Saint Severus. I'm here with Logan, and we're gonna talk about my very fresh music career, and hopefully after this we'll have a lot more listeners on my end of things, which is always good, right?
That's true, although to be fair, your music's been getting a fair bit of attention on Spotify. When I looked today, there was about like 13,000 monthly listeners, so that's a good start.
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with the fact that I, as an artist, realized the importance of treating my music more so as a business. And I know it takes a bit of music industry literacy, not a lot of it, but a bit, to understand how music promotion works. You know, what are the best ways to organically increase your amount of listeners, amount of streams. So it's really just been a matter of me investing in my own craft. So, seeing those numbers go up in the way that they have, like I still can't believe it. Like I only put out for the most part music in the last 4 months, right? My first song, Death Row, came out in August, and I put out Original Sin, my album, a little over a week ago. So to see those numbers, it's surreal.
How would you describe who Saint Severus is and the kind of music that you do?
Well, I think for the most part, the one thing I always tell myself about Saint Severus is that you can't put Saint Severus in a specific box in terms of genre, in terms of style. And I find that, a lot of artists, they kind of shoot for the, like, I want to be different from the rest of the mainstream artists, which is totally understandable. Why be one of many when you could be, so to speak, a rare gem, right? I'm not saying I am a rare gem, but the way I would define Saint Severus is it's a character heavily inspired by my own real life experiences, and a lot of the music, it really just touches on real life situations, real life, the emotions you feel in real life when you deal with experiences that are either traumatic or pleasant, right? And I think it's important to really shed light on the fact that everybody has their negative experiences that kind of shape how they perceive the world. And also just, understanding that there is a way out of things that seemingly show no way out. So yeah, I think for the most part, there's a layer of like I guess, for lack of a better term, the music could be therapeutic for some people. Maybe people can listen and relate and be like, oh wow, like I can totally see what Saint Severus is saying, what Saint Severus is feeling. But yeah, it's really just an exaggerated version of myself.
That's totally fine, because you've been doing this since 2019, as I understand it. You started in 2019. How has it been building sort of a profile for yourself and figuring out yourself as a musician?
So when I started out in 2019, I was a music producer, which, if many people aren't aware, not every music producer does like vocal work, right? And not every vocalist does music production work. So when I started out in 2019, I was really like, to this day, I would not say that I'm like well versed in the world of music, because the way I learned music production was very different than what most people, go through when they learn music. I didn't learn a thing of music theory when I started out in 2019. Absolutely no music theory. The closest thing I took to a music class was like in third grade, when they force you to you got to play the flute, in one of your elective classes, so I learned how to produce music on a software called Reason, which a lot of people don't even know about, but the ones that do know about it, they would argue that it is a very, very interesting software, to say the least. I know a lot of people's preferred softwares like FL Studio or Logic. For me, because I started out on Reason, and because I understood Reason, for it being my first music software to learn on, I can't see myself producing on anything else. But in regards to building a profile, I didn't really put myself out there at all as a music producer. I did put out one like beat tape in 2020, but I took it down because, well, for one, I didn't want those beats that I was so new to making. Like I just didn't want that to be out there. Like once you progress and once you realize what you're capable of and what you've done in the past, it's like, okay, maybe that wasn't my best work, so I took it down. Also, and this is just me, like at the time being nitpicky, but also understanding the importance of like branding and marketing. Before I was Saint Severus, I was just Severus. And the problem with being just Severus was that so many other people had the same name, and they were artists, and they shared like the Apple Music pages and Spotify pages. So like 4 or 5 different people were Severus, and I was like, I don't like this. I have access to all these profiles, but I can't manipulate the catalog in any way so that it's just my music. So I was like, all right, I need to change something here. So one day, it's a funny story of how the Saint came about. If you've ever played on the PlayStation 2, I don't know if you're a gamer, but I'm a really big fan of video games, and I grew up on like PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3. So I used to play the pro wrestling video games, the WWE games on the PlayStation 2, and you could create a wrestler. And in those games, they were very limited in like how you could have your wrestler announced, and one of the names was the Saint, and I was like, that sounds cool. And then it just clicked, Saint Severus. I was like, that's it. That's how we're gonna go moving forward. That wasn't even that long ago. That was like 2 years ago. I was playing the video game and I was like, oh shoot, that could work. But yeah, the branding really didn't start happening until very recently, and I think it's working out for the best, because a lot of people are obviously aware now of who I am, where I come from, and what I have put out. So it seems to be working.
That's fantastic. So you definitely got the marketing and promotional side of things down. And I think that Saint Severus is a dope name. But like, how did you decide on the type of music that you're doing? I know you don't fit into a box, but like, who are your main influences, and how do you think you've incorporated their kind of styles into your own stuff?
I would say, obviously, like if I were to have like a top 3 all-time favorites in no particular order, Michael Jackson, Tears for Fears, The Weeknd. And I know that's like a kind of like a whole different worlds of music, but somehow, some way, they all intertwine. When it comes to just like vocal range and delivery, I'm a really big fan of The Weeknd's music. I feel like over the 10 plus years that he's, put himself out as an artist, there's just been a wide array of like uh there's music that fits into like the dark R&B. Then there's like the traditional R&B music that he also has made. I know he's done a lot of collaborative songs as well with different producers. One of my favorite songs that he has done with well-known producers is Moth to a Flame, which is a track he did with Swedish House Mafia. And I like it because it's got that, high BPM dance beat, but like it's got the Weeknd's really soothing but dark vocals on it. And that's basically like what I would say is my music is taking what's typical and orthodox and somehow making it unorthodox, somehow making it against the grain, somehow making it so that it's not necessarily a familiar thing, but it's got a sense of familiar, sounds, or it's not completely familiar, but it's familiar enough for you to be like, oh, this is just a combination of this genre and that genre. And I think that's what a lot of I would say my music is. It's just a combination of different genres that already exist.
That's fantastic. It's interesting that you mention like the WWE kind of video gamey kind of music and everything like that, because a lot of it that was that kind of hip hop and kind of rock music kind of stuff. I'm just sort of trying to like sort of link it back because I can definitely hear the Weeknd influences in your music. How did you record the stuff in your record? Like you see, you've been using Reason, but how did you record and produce it? Like what instruments did you use and stuff like that?
So a lot of synths were used, and some of these synthesizers were built in to Reason. I tried my best to kind of stick to what was within the software because I really wanted to push the limits of the software, kind of see, all right, how much can I make out of this? And to be honest with you, I don't think I've even tapped into a fraction of that software when it comes to how much I can make out of it. There's a lot of loops as well, a lot of samples. Big shout out to Splice, because that was really kind of like a game changer for me when I really just had like producer's block or writer's block or something along the lines of, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to produce something right now. I'm not creatively, inclined to do anything. I'd go on Splice and I would see this like wide array of just like insane samples. Too good to be on a website that I only pay like $10 a month for. But you know what? It's there. It's royalty free. I'm not going to complain. Shout out to the people that were willing to put their fantastic music on there, and I put together a lot of music with Splice for Original Sin. It was truly a game changer. Some of the tracks I actually bought some of the beats because they were just so good. I was like, why would I not buy these beats? So it's a collection of some of my own production, some of just like my arrangement of other people's production, and then just other people's production as a whole.
That's wild. That's wild. Because that's what you can do nowadays. You can go onto websites like Splice and you can get people to just make beats over the internet for you. Like, how is it doing your vocals on the album?
So the same room that I'm sitting in talking to you from. This is the same room that I recorded my vocals in, and it's, for most people who are actually, like music producers or mixers, audio engineers, they can probably pick up on, studio quality versus anything other than studio quality, right? Like for them it's probably easy to pick up on that. But I just had a very typical microphone, literally like my desktop computer is right there. I'm looking at the microphone. I just like, it's a very, very like bare bones setup. And I was concerned before I ever even like had a song mixed. Um, I was like, how can this sound good? I mean, I see all of these people who are audio engineers talk about how your room has to be made of like freaking the specific kinds of wood and all the, like, you cannot have carpet. And I'm like, how can I don't think I can put out anything decent, man. I don't think, I don't think I can do it. And then I was like, you know what? Let me just see what the power of technology can do. Let me just see what people can do with these vocals, right? So, obviously I found you on Fiverr. I found a bunch of other people on Fiverr that do audio engineering work. And I was like, make something happen with this. And to my surprise, the main person that I was working with in regards to mixing and mastering, they were able to pull it off wonderfully. And I was like, wow, clearly technology has done its thing, and no one can ever say we are living in the Stone Age, because I don't think we are at a point now in regards to technology where you can't make anything happen. I mean, I'm hearing AI rappers now. I'm hearing like I'm hearing all sorts of like Drake songs made from AI. I'm like, what? This is crazy. So never say never in today's day and age. That's all I can say. So that was the process with the vocals.
Yeah, like on the question of AI, how do you think AI is going to affect the music industry?
I was reminded of I believe it happened in 2014. Michael Jackson, obviously by that point he had passed away. He'd passed for 5 years, and at the I believe it was the AMA award show, there was a performance of Michael Jackson, and it was basically produced with a combination of motion capture and AI. They call it Pepper's Ghost. That's the name of the technology. But it looked so real. Like if no one had told me that you are watching a first of all a person who is dead perform, right? And then on top of that, if you had told me, if you didn't tell me like, hey, this is all technology here, I would have believed that was a real person performing, right? So going back to like, how is AI going to affect the music industry? I would not be surprised if down the line we hear like, whether it's full-blown albums, or maybe we hear like collabs of like artists that haven't been alive for ages. Like suddenly we hear like Elvis Presley come back from the dead.
No, that would be a lot.
And here's the thing, I would not put anybody within the music industry past doing such a thing. because if there's one thing I've learned about the music industry is that if there's money to be made and if it can be done and executed, regardless of the morals behind it or the implications that could, be within doing such a thing like having AI or what have you. Like it's not talked about a lot, but it's happened before. We've had artists who kind of gave their vocals to another artist's project, and the label just said, "Oh yeah, this is the artist that we are promoting," but it wasn't actually them. It was just another artist. It was kind of like how there's ghost writers, but I guess this was a ghost vocalist, right? So again, it comes back to like Michael Jackson. I know it was a Michael Jackson project from like 2010 that came out, and there was a song on there that it wasn't Michael Jackson's vocals. So who's to say? I mean, it might just be a lot more openly done, those kinds of practices. I wouldn't necessarily think that people would find it appealing. I think there's a level of comfort that listeners have with, their music. And I think if they're understanding that, oh, this isn't actually the artist performing, and this isn't actually like their voice, not their lyrics, like it's nothing is actually theirs, then I can't see AI succeeding in the way that record labels might find it to be successful. I personally wouldn't listen to like an AI produced track or album.
Because what would the role of the musician then be?
Right. And I think it's already enough that we have posthumous releases, right? For me, having control over your own art, that's the bottom line, right? Is like the approval of the artist, right? If my name is attached to something, I should have authority over whether or not that gets put out, right? So what we have seen in the last few years is a lot of young artists have passed away, unfortunately, and their catalog that's largely unreleased, it belongs to the labels that they were signed to, and those labels have full authority over what they put out. Right? And those labels get to like compile all these unreleased stems, and they'll get like 3 or 4 other artists to hop on the track and be like, all right, complete the song, and then we'll put out a posthumous album. I mean, we've seen it with like Juice WRLD. I'm not sure if there was a posthumous release of Pop Smoke, but either way, if there was or if there wasn't, I don't think it's respectful to the artists who have passed away put those kinds of projects out, because at the end of the day, they weren't there to sign off on it and be like, okay, put it out. It's also there's probably a reason why it wasn't put out. If it wasn't for the fact that it's incomplete and they just never got to finish it, they probably just weren't comfortable with putting it out, right? So that seems to be a trend now, is like a lot of artists have their catalogs that are just kind of sitting in the vault, and it's kept in the vault for a reason, and labels take their liberties, and you know what, they're the ones who write up the documents, right, that get signed by the artist. They're the ones that know the fine print. Like they know how to read their own contracts. So maybe for them it's just a game of chess, right? It's like, all right, we get them to sign, and they don't read the nitty-gritty details, and they won't care later down the line if we do something with their work, because they signed off on a paper. So there is a level of control and authority that comes with being an independent artist, which is something that as somebody who isn't even like on like a scale of like, I'm not performing, or I'm not, like selling out merch or anything like that, but I'm like embracing the fact that as long as I'm an independent artist, as long as I have full control over what I put out and what I produce, I'm the only one that gets to say what is put out there and what's not.
So for you, I'm assuming that your future, including the album that you've just released, it's going to be as an independent artist. You're just going to be sort of managing and promoting yourself like that?
I think as long as, there's incentive to remain independent, or, or I guess lack of incentive to be signed to a label, I think it's gonna be me being independent for the most part. I think we live in a day and age where it's, as long as you've got the money for it, being an independent artist isn't so bad. But also, it's coming out of your own pockets, right? And that's the function. The function of a label is they act as your wallet until you have to repay them in the form of revenue, right? They kind of act as your pockets. So, will I be putting out like expensive budget, music videos? Who's to say? We'll see how my financial situation is looking. But again, that's part of being an independent artist, right? It's like, I don't have a timeline, I don't have a deadline, I don't have to bend to anybody's demands. It's like, it's all me. So I'm gonna enjoy being independent as long as I can. But I think because of how much more people in general know about the music industry, I think negotiations with certain labels might be, for lack of a better term, easier to deal with. I think more artists are gonna start asking for things that they feel like they deserve and feel like they're owed, because they value themselves specifically, right? So yeah, if I ever do get somehow somebody contacted by a label, I'm not selling myself short. Like, if you want Saint Severus, you're gonna have to, value me in a specific way that's gonna, satisfy me and also satisfy your business needs, right? Because it's like, either I miss out on a lot of money, or the label misses out on what they potentially could have made as a result of signing me. So it's like, who loses, who wins, who knows?
Because now that you've released this album, and now that you're getting some attention for it, which is well deserved, what's next for Saint Severus? Because you've mentioned not doing live shows at the moment. Is that something you'd like to do in future?
Absolutely. I think right now it's just a matter of, my catalog is really small. It's only 10 songs, and not all 10 of these songs are like, I guess, I wouldn't say I would want to perform them, right? Just because some songs are better live, some songs are just better, you just listen to it on your streaming platform or whatever, right? I think if once the music catalog expands, then the potential of live shows will increase. So yeah, that's the future in regards to like live performances and what have you.
And where would you like to play if you could play anywhere?
I know I previously mentioned in an interview, when I put out Death Row, I said the Greek Theater in LA would be somewhere that I wanted to play. But now that I've like, I guess, experienced certain venues, certain kinds of venues, I think if I were to really just have like complete, freedom with how I would present my performances, and how I would, aesthetically, pull off the shows that I would want to pull off. Uh, just doing a show at Levi's Stadium, which is pretty close to where I live in the Bay Area. I went to the Weeknd's concert in August, and the experience there was unreal. It was my first ever concert, and I got to see him front row. And I think just, that stadium's like close to home. It's a familiar place. It's like, it's kind of like I don't know like what the biggest venue is where you're from, or like where like the biggest hub is where you're from for gathering, but like every like urban area has like that big place where everybody's like, man, like we're like there's like a big game happening here, or like a big act is coming here. It's like it's a big deal when somebody's opening up a show in these bigger venues. I mean, take a look at the World Cup, right? Like those few stadiums in Qatar are like being used for, I don't know if they were ever used before the World Cup, but they're finally being used. And I guess for them it's definitely a big deal. Like, hey, this is where the World Cup's happening, right? Like, so Levi's Stadium, the Super Bowl's happened here. We've had a WrestleMania here. We've had various musical acts here. It's like that's the place that I think now in this decade, because it's a relatively new stadium. I think that's the place where people want to perform at some point. If they're from the Bay Area, especially, I think that's the place I want to perform at, ideally.
Nice. And do you think you'd do it as a solo act, or would you get some collaborators on board and kind of make it like a bigger kind of group event?
I think there is give me a minute, I gotta drink of water.
It's all good, man. It's all good. You take your time.
It's because I had COVID, so symptoms are
Oh
still
no. Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that, man. That's rough.
It's all good. It's like all this, I haven't talked this much like on a continuous basis for like a cool week and a half, so my throat's like, what is happening? But anyways, whether or not it'd be a solo act or like a group thing, of course, every artist, they want to do their own show, right? Like, not to be selfish or anything, but it's like there's obviously when people come to see you, it's a different feeling, right? And going back to that Weeknd concert I went to, it was pretty funny. One of the people that I was in the same row as, she was upset because the opener of that show was, it changed a lot. The pandemic changed a lot of the Weeknd's scheduling and just the overall layout of that tour. It was initially supposed to be like just an arena tour, right? It wasn't even a stadium tour. So I had bought tickets to the Oakland show, and Don Toliver was supposed to open for that version of the tour before it eventually got rescheduled and then canceled. But when after the cancellation, there was a stadium tour announced, which is eventually what everybody went to, was a stadium tour. And Doja Cat was supposed to be the opener for all the stadium shows. Unfortunately, Doja Cat had some health issues. I think she had like a surgery or something, and she's like, I can't perform because this surgery prevents me from performing at 100%, so I'm not opening. And then the opener got changed again. It eventually ended up being Snow Allegra and Mike Dean opening, and it was a couple. that came, and it was the wife. She was really upset that it wasn't Doja Cat opening, and she made the biggest scene. She was throwing F-bombs and like she was like really upset, and we all couldn't help but just like laugh because it's like, okay, did you not come here to see the weekend? You came here to see the opener? Like no shade to the opener, right? Because the opener is the opener. Their job is to get the crowd in the freaking seats, right? It's like, look, the show's about to start, and we have an equally talented artist opening for you guys. Come on down, get situated, right? So to me, that whole situation was just hilarious because it was like, first of all, it had been announced by that point for several months that, hey, Doja Cat's not performing. So shame on you for not keeping up with the tour that you paid so much money to go to. That was the other thing she kept complaining about. It was like, I paid $3,000. And it's like, wow, you paid way more than anybody else in this row. I did not pay that much. So like I'm starting to understand. Like everything's piecing together now. You're mad about an opener, you overpaid. Cause something's telling me you're not very bright. So yeah. If I were to open for somebody, like the weekend, like I'd be more than happy to do that. I don't care if people know me or not. Like that's an opportunity of a lifetime to work with somebody who like you look up to, for artistic inspiration. Like it's what dreams are made of, right? And eventually to have that for yourself, and you get to decide who your opener is, and you get to decide where you perform, assuming artists get to decide where they perform, because back to the conversation of labels, right? It's like, how much control is there? Not sure, but I can only assume that artists of the magnitude such as The Weeknd or any other artists of that magnitude, because they're so valuable and they're highly valued, and they bring in a lot of money, I feel like they have a certain level of freedom that maybe other artists don't have within the same labels. But yeah, obviously to have something of your own in which everybody comes to see you, that's a whole different feeling in and of itself, right? So yeah, I would totally want something of my own, but I wouldn't be opposed to like a group or a collaborative effort.
No, that sounds wonderful. Well, I hope you do feel better soon, but also while you recover, like what would the ideal situation for you be in future? Like where are you heading towards as Saint Severus?
Well, I would really just make the joke that this is this music stuff, it's like a side mission for me. It's not really something that I'm like doing as a like I'm not going into it like this is my main like focus in life. Obviously, like I'm only 20 years old. I'm a college student, and I'm close to graduating, and there's a whole lot of things that I'm focused on. But if the music thing somehow picks up steam and it ends up being like a viable way to kind of live off of, right? Like if I can actually make money that puts food on the table, roof over my head, that kind of thing, I really want it to kind of help me transition into other realms of entertainment, because at heart I'm an entertainer, right? If I'm not doing music, I'm probably working on making content on YouTube, or I'm probably like a month ago I was a lead in a theater show for my college.
Nice.
So Like these aren't things that are like my primary focuses. These are more so things that like are on a utility belt, and at any given moment I can just like pull it out and be like, all right, this is something I can do, and I can do it, in a meaningful way. Whatever comes about comes about. I think, like I said, the music thing could be a great way to transition into like acting, or potentially working with other artists that I might have like a degree of connection to, because I don't even realize it, but like I'm not, like, when you take a look at degrees of separation, I'm not that far away from a lot of these big artists that I look up to. One of my biggest mentors in music production, he is the older brother of a big Bay Area artist here, and he's obviously got connections, and the connections create more connections. It's like the world is yours once you've got the networking down. And I think that's something I would want everyone to like. It doesn't matter if you're an artist or you're just like a student, or it doesn't matter who you are. If you can network, then you've got success down. And of course, networking requires kind of like a level of, like you kind of need like that social battery. And I know not everybody has it in them, every moment of life. Like my social battery was drained for like a solid year, up until like the beginning of, not even the beginning of, like probably like mid year 2022. That's when like my social battery started like kicking in again. It's like, oh, I can finally like consider the thought of going out and like talking to people, meeting new people, that sort of thing. But yeah, networking, it'll really get you places that you wouldn't even dream of.
That's fantastic. Well, I mean, like, I suppose from what you've learned over the last 3 years, is the networking thing the biggest lesson you'd give to people, or what advice would you give to someone who's working on their first album? From what would you say to people?
I would say bet on yourself, because everything you do, not just in an artistic way, but just everything you do in life is a gamble. And gambles tend to pay off more when you believe in yourself, when you have faith in yourself. I was really scared to put out this album. I was scared to put out my first song. I remember just like the nerves that I had, because obviously, every artist will probably say this, your own biggest critic is you, right? For the most part, I think every conscious artist criticizes themselves the most. And I think that's just due to the fact that, when you are the creator of something, you tend to find more ways to pull off the exact same thing that other people are listening to, right? So, like, the first song that I put out, when I listened back to it, I personally think like it was good enough to put out in my eyes, right? But, as my own biggest critic, it's like, obviously I could have done something different to make it better, right? But that's a natural part of just like that self-criticism as an artist. But the fact of the matter is like, if I didn't believe in myself to put that out, if I didn't like bet on myself within this gamble, right, then like it would have just been me sitting on a song, on a bunch of beats that I made, and nobody would ever know about it, and nobody would ever know who I am, and we'd all like, this interview wouldn't happen. Like, it'd just be a bunch of nothingness. And then like a lot of these songs, a lot of these beats that I've been sitting on them for like years. Like some things I made back when I first started, some things I made later down the line. But at the end of the day, it's like in my head it was, I had to do something with these beats, right? I had to do something with these lyrics that I've written, right? It's like, why did I write these lyrics? Why did I have these certain ideas for songs in my head if there's gonna be nothing? So I was like, you know what? Let's just see where things go. And I think that's what ultimately I would tell people who are feeling a sense of fear or like nervousness, anxiety. It's like, just see where things go. If you're already thinking of it in your head, if the idea of something is sticking with you, then it's probably going to stick with others. If something isn't like catchy in your head, if something isn't like clicking in your head, then it's already, it's not something that you would want to put out. But if something is doing that for you, if something is clicking, if something is catchy in your head and you like it, then it's like, do something with it. Bring it out to the world. Let's see how the world reacts.
That's honestly the best bit of advice, because you're right. A lot of people, they struggle to put that first song out, and then they never do it. You did it,
Yeah.
Saint Severus, with your album, and congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it took me, I don't know, at this point, like probably almost 2 years to really just pull the trigger on a full-fledged album. But you know what? That time was necessary between me just thinking about it and like formulating it to actually executing it, because with time comes a lot of different improvements and a lot of different ideas can be executed. There's still a ton of songs that are, kind of in my head now, and I'm like thinking of them, and I'm like, you know what? I've got another album in me, so.
Well, I hope you can do it. I hope you put out another album, man, because the first album was pretty dope. By the way, where can people find your music?
I am on most major streaming platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Tidal. I'm pretty sure there's like a long list of platforms that exist that I probably don't even know the name of. But if you go on any of the major platforms, you search Saint Severus, I will be there. I hope. I know the distributor that I go through tends to put out music through like every platform imaginable. So yeah, Saint Severus on every platform.
Absolutely. Well, Saint Severus, it was an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. Thank you very much for telling us more about yourself and your music. And I wish you the best of luck in future with musical endeavors.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Cheers. You have a great night.
All right. Thank you.
And that's effectively the interview that I had today with Saint Severus, number 36. It's wild to think I've done that many of these now, but honestly, I feel like I learned a lot from that chat that I had. That lovely conversation with that lovely individual. They're just 20 and they've released this album. It's wild, man. Honestly, like we were talking about all the possibilities and opportunities with music technology nowadays. And I think it just blows me away what people are capable of. I wish, again, as I said to Saint Severus, I wish them the best of luck with their music, because effectively, this is my interview. As I said before, I don't know why I'm repeating myself. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go check out Saint Severus's various social medias, and this will be on Spotify, so I'll put the Spotify page here as well as our digital streaming platforms. And stay cool, stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next interview. Spiderhands out.